Welcome everybody to WebChat with Minnesota Adult Education. We're excited to see you all here today, and thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat and letting us know how fall is going. Many of you have seen this tech slide before. If you have any tech help needs, please chat with Wendy with Literacy Action Network, our host for today. Check your name in the participant list, and please make sure you have your first and last name in the participant list. And you can click on your name to under More to rename yourself. And then here are some other items that you'll see on the bottom of the screen with your toolbar to mute or unmute yourself and start your video if you would like to later on during the Q&A session. Okay, well, let's get started. We are recording today's session. And this is our web chat with Minnesota Adult Education, our last one for 2022, our fall edition. In today's conversation, we are going to do introductions and welcome. We have a couple of brief announcements. We'll be talking about transitions, then accountability, and then grants and finance. Our last couple topics are high school equivalency and professional development. And then we'll make sure we have time for your questions. One other note of interest for today's session, immediately after this session, we will be having a session on strategic approaches to distance learning. This is being led by staff from Literacy Minnesota from 2:35 to 3:30. You actually don't have to sign out, or there's not an additional registration for that webinar. You can just stay right in this webinar and hear and discuss with Literacy Minnesota strategic approaches to distance learning. So hopefully many of you will be able to stay for that conversation as well. Let's introduce our adult education team at the Minnesota Department of Education. My name is Brad Haskamp, and I'm the State Director of Adult Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jody Versa. I am the Program Quality Specialist on the team.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Denko. I'm the Transition Specialist at the Department of Education.
Hello, everyone. I'm Astrid Leiden, and I'm the Professional Development Specialist on the team. Good to see you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy Logan, and I'm the High School Equivalency Specialist on the team.
Hello, I'm Neil Aller. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Records, Communications, and Administrative Support Specialist here on the team.
Thanks, everyone. And we will be having another team member joining us yet this year. It'll be exciting to get everyone from our team fully up and going and have a full team for the first time in more than 2 years. So, in case you are not aware, this week is National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. And so this is a great week to share a little bit about adult education, the importance of adult education and family literacy. And so we've been talking with the Minnesota Department of Education. We've shared this information with other community partners, but I'd also love to hear from each and every one of you. Please share in the chat a meaningful moment that you have had in adult education. The adult education field is just such an exciting field. And there's so much that happens each and every day in each and every classroom, wherever we're providing instruction. And it's so the importance of the work that you do is it can be seen in the students, in our graduates, in people that attended maybe a couple of years ago and are now instructors or staff themselves in our adult education program. There's so much amazing work that happens. And I want to share a couple of the important things that we have been seeing from some of you in adult education. But as I do that, again, I really strongly encourage you, please share a meaningful moment that you have had in adult education. And let's take a moment to pause and give you a chance to share with us a memory. Go ahead and chat in the Type in the chat. Let us know about a meaningful moment that you have had in adult education. Charlene, you're talking about how you were able to help a student set up Wi-Fi on their new laptop that he had just purchased. Excellent. Tracy, yesterday, a memorable, meaningful moment from yesterday, just staying late to walk an ESL student through their first job application for a district position in community education. Oh, exciting. Penny, you're talking about a student that's struggled severely with anxiety, wouldn't even look at you, and now the student has received her GED. Wow, lots of hugs, tears, and a smile. Excellent. Kelly, a long time ago, you had an 82-year-old man graduate with his high school diploma, and that's absolutely true. You're never too old, and adult education is proof of that. Excellent. Thank you. I want to share a couple of great quotes that I have seen as well from our adult education programs. ABE has reached out to some of the students in adult education to get some information. Why is adult education important to you? And what Angelica talks about how education is everything. You need education to get better jobs. It's important to be able to start with a GED at least. And sometimes in our countries, we're not able to finish our education for many reasons. When we get here, we find out that we need to get better because we need better jobs, better salaries, better incomes for our families. And that all starts with education. Nelsie talked about why adult education is important to them. For them, it was important, it was wonderful and great because when they came to this country, they didn't have any words to say in English. In their first 6 months, Nelsie told their husband, I want to leave. I want to get divorced. I made a mistake. I have no friends here. I have nobody to talk to. But when my husband got me in school, he told me, come on, we need to try because I love you. And this was a big difference in Nelsie's life. Right now, Nelsie has more opportunities. Nelsie said, I work with my husband. I go to a painting class. I can talk with many people. I can read the newspaper. I can look at the movies. I can talk with my grandsons. And that is another important message, that a lot of our adult education is there's the economic importance, and then there's also the personal importance, the empowerment that you have individually to do things you were not able to do before, to reach new people you have not connected with before, and that's whether you're a student or a staff person or a volunteer in our adult education programs. And so I want to say thank you to all of you for the essential work that you're doing in adult education. Adult education is a unique system, and we see the results of your important work each and every day. And that is in the impression, in the improvement, in the lives of each of our students and each of the graduates, and things that they are doing now that they were not able to do, that they did not have access to before. So thank you for your important work. Please continue to share your meaningful moments in the chat. Also with meaningful, I'd like to open it up right now to Wendy Sweeney to share another important announcement with us today. Wendy?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. I have a very important announcement to make you aware of. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has now been changed to a very easy to remember 988. So similar to 911 that we all know so well. For anybody who's having suicidal thoughts or going through a crisis, they can just text, call, or chat 988 and be connected with a professional. It's free and confidential and available 24/7. There are also interpreter services in over 150 languages for any of our ESL students. And the website is there at the bottom of the screen. So I was just wanting to make sure you have all that information. And if you need more training on suicide prevention, I do have a course on the Literacy Minnesota website, which I can put in the chat box if you want to take that course for a CEU for suicide prevention. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate you sharing that information. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Julie from our team. Julie.
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to update the field on a few of the transitions activities that are happening. One thing to be aware of is that the Memorandum of Understanding, which is the MOU that's done with all the workforce partners in a local area, is due December 30th of this year. And that's important because, well, it's important for a lot of reasons, but it also includes the IFA, which is the infrastructure agreement. And in the past, there have been some concerns about the IFA and what adult basic education needs to contribute, because as a part of the one-stop system, we do have to make a contribution to that system. So I imagine that the local workforce boards will be pulling in adult basic education partners, among other partners, to work on developing this. It will be due December 30th of this year. Next slide, please. I also want to update everyone on the 4 online statewide training courses. There are 4 of them that adult basic education learners can attend if they meet like the qualifications or the academic level of the courses. And the first one here is Healthcare Core. And registration is currently open for that class. The information is on the flyer, and a link is in the chat that will provide more information on all of these courses. So the link actually will give you more detailed descriptions, and at the very end of the worksheet that this links to, you can access the flyers. Next slide, please. TEAS Prep, that's coming up right around the corner. And please refer potential nursing students that are interested in preparing to take this assessment. Again, they're hoping to begin September 27th, so refer anyone who might be interested. Next slide, please. Microsoft Office Specialist training. This is a certification. They're looking to begin October 26th, and then they do an initial onboarding, and then additional students can be taken in November 30th and December 12th. Again, any ABE program can refer learners to these courses. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the paraprofessional training, and that's going to begin January 23rd. This is similar to Parapro, but this is a different curriculum. From what I've heard, it's supposed to be a better curriculum for learners to use. Again, January 23rd is the start date on that one. Next slide, please. Then I also wanted to make you aware of 3 briefs that were created through part of our supplemental service grant with the Minnesota Association of Workforce Boards. And those 3 grants were trying to emphasize the different types of programming in adult basic education that people generally do not think of when they think of adult basic education. When people refer to ABE, they think of GED or English language learning. But we wanted to highlight adult career pathways, integrated education and training, and workplace literacy. So this one on adult career pathways, it's just a 2-page brief. And it really gives like the federal definition, and it gives a basic like synopsis of what it is. And then it gives an example. And the example on this brief is the Rochester Adult Basic Education Bridges to Careers. And that highlights this program as an adult career pathway program. The other one is Integrated Education and Training. And again, it gives just an overview of what is integrated education and training. You know, what's the definition? What might it look like? And then we give a local example. And this is from International Institute, and it's the Dietary Aid Program. And it's a primary example of what a good integrated education and training program might look like. And then the third one is workplace literacy. And this is done with Great Rivers ABE in Anderson's Windows and Renewal by Anderson. And it's a great example, again, of working with employer, doing workplace literacy with an employer. And we're thinking of when you are doing outreach to local employers where a lot of learners are currently working. These are great resources to have on hand to show as examples of what is happening across the state in these areas and how that could look for them as an employer, or how we could support them as an employer. And then also for your local boards might be interested in this, and any other partners. So if you need something to just describe integrated education and training, or these three new areas to any partner, this is a good place to start. And thank you, Neil. She's added those all to the chat, so those are available for people to have. And then I just wanted to mention that this year is a year where we're going to pilot ability to benefit. And ability to benefit allows a learner who is transitioning into college to show that they have the ability to benefit from college, and that will allow them to use or access or turn on financial aid. So there's three ways that this can be done. We are piloting the state-defined process. This is like the one of three ways. And anyways, these will be available, or these are the colleges that are going to be working with the ABE contacts at the local level. There's two others that might be joining, but initially this is who it will be. And that's it. I think we're moving on to accountability.
Yep. Thank you, Julie. And just remember that Neil's pronouns are they, them. And so thank you, Neil, for putting all the great information in the chat. I really appreciate that. Let's talk about accountability. So first, we have our statewide targets. We'd like to make sure that you're still remembering our statewide targets. Targets are annual performance goals that are set with the U.S. Department of Education for our statewide adult education system. Targets have changed significantly because of COVID-related changes to programming. So hopefully this is not new to you, but we have, there are 5 different WIOA, or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act indicators that we have targets for as a statewide adult education system. Measurable skill gain, or MSGs, which include pre and post testing, as well as earning a diploma and a couple of other options. Employment rate for those, for all participants 6 months after exiting adult education. Also, what's the employment rate for our participants 1 year after exiting adult education? And then what are the median quarterly earnings for our adults after they have exited our program and are employed? And then also what percentage of those are making the credential attainment indicator? And so and I'll describe the credential attainment indicator in just a moment here. And for 2022-23, our targets for each of those are in that blue column. So for measurable skill gains, the ones that you have the most control over, that's 27.5%. And in 2020-21, our outcomes were 23%. So it's an improvement from what we had, but remember during 2020 and 2021, we had a lot of COVID-related exemptions to testing going on during that time. So I'm hoping that each and every program can make that 27.5%. And as you see with the employment outcomes, the median quarterly earnings, and the credential attainment, our targets are not that much higher or equal to, in many cases, what we did in terms of 2020, 2021 with our outcomes. So that's just a little bit of comparison for you. Let's dive a little deeper into credential attainment. And that indicator actually has is measuring two different cohorts. One, it's looking at all of those that earned a diploma and then taking a look a year later and seeing for those a year after exiting adult education, how many of those that earned a diploma in adult ed were either employed or enrolled in post-secondary education or training. In addition, we are also looking at all of those that were co-enrolled in adult education and post-secondary education. And then we look at them a year after leaving adult education to see how many had completed a post-secondary certificate within 1 year of exiting adult education. So these are the two different types of cohorts that we have to measure for this credential attainment indicator. And just note then that we have to merge those together and make sure that those are two deduplicated groups and that we're not counting anybody in either cohort in the cohorts twice. So that it gets a little complicated, a little convoluted. It requires work from data from SID as well as matching with DEED and our Minnesota State post-secondary system. So just a little bit of information about that credential attainment indicator. And just note that the credential attainment indicator, we have statewide results there, but we do not have consortium level results. And because it is such a difficult and complicated measure, we cannot report out consortium level results. However, we do have consortium level results for all of our other indicators. And also just a reminder, what is the significance of this at the program level in particular? So within the program level, for any consortium that has extremely low performance on the accountability measures, especially measurable skill gains, in 2022 and 2023, they may be required to participate in program improvement in 2023. 2024 in the next year. And remember, program improvement, or for those of you that might not be aware of it, that includes a workshop, it includes some program planning, and there's technical assistance that programs receive from the Minnesota Department of Education. And remember, these programs can participate at the consortium level. We do not go to the provider level for these, but this is consortium by consortium that we look at your outcomes. So before we move on, I think there's some questions in the chat. I'm wondering if one of my team members could help me with the chat.
Yes, Brad, one question we had was whether the statewide training courses are considered post-secondary certification.
Oh,
I'm assuming in relation to the credential attainment indicator.
Yes, so the statewide training courses typically or may not be. And the way that you know if it is there a credential that's earned at the end, and can you mark that in SID? If there is a credential that's earned at the end of that training course, and if it can be, you can mark that in SID in student history, then that would count as a post-secondary certification in most cases. Great question.
That is the only question I see so far in the chat, Brad.
Excellent. Thank you, Astrid. I appreciate that. Well, feel free to chat in additional questions, and we'll take that we'll answer those questions during our Q&A period at the end. But let's dive into some grants and finance issues as well. Julie, are you still here? Okay, looks like we may have lost Julie to another meeting here, but we did want to announce the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Grantees. There are 12 grantees this year, and these grants will last for up to 3 years. Our grantees include Adult Options in Education, Great Rivers Adult Education, Hmong Cultural Center, International Institute of Minnesota, Literacy Minnesota, Mankato Area Public Schools, Metro North Adult Education, Metro South Adult Education, Minneapolis Adult Education, Neighborhood House, Southeast Adult Education, in Owatonna, and St. Paul Public Schools. So congratulations to all 12 of you, and we're really excited about all of the work that you will accomplish over the next couple of years. So congratulations on winning those grants and for the work that you have ahead of you. We also wanted to share an update, remind you about the 2 reports that are due for the FIN 166, Financial Identification Number 166 funding, which is our 2021-22 additional ABE funding grant. There are 2 final reports that are due. One is the financial reporting forms, or the FRFs, and the final outcomes report. With the FRFs, the financial reporting forms, the MDE grants team will send an updated FRF to the consortium manager after they finish processing invoices from the January to June 2022 period, and from those FRFs, or the reporting forms. Because those forms and that processing is delayed, we are extending the deadline for the final FRFs to the July to August period, for that final 2-month period of that grant eligibility. Those are originally supposed to be due in September, but because you don't have your updated FRF or financial reporting form, you obviously can't submit your final report for those financial reports. So what you'll do is once we get those reports out, there will be an extended deadline, and you should have at least a month to kind of complete those once our financial reporting forms are processed. So that is regarding the financial reporting forms. Now, with our final outcomes report, that one is different. This one is linked to a Google form, and we sent that to each of the consortium managers. Each consortium must submit 1 report by October 31st, 2022. And that final outcomes report includes a couple of items. One, it's just asking some simple questions. What consortium is completing this? Who's the contact person? We're also asking about enrollees, contact or proxy hours, participant numbers, measurable skill gains, data like that for any of those that were helped by the funding. Now, if your funding went to things that helped all students within your consortium, you can include consortium-wide data for that if you're able. But just note that we understand that it can be a little complicated to know exactly how many people were helped by that funding. So we ask to just estimate to the best of your ability. And if you need to generalize for your entire consortium, that's okay. And then we also just want a little bit of knowledge about a brief description of how the funding was used. We have a checklist, and you can check any and all of the options if it went towards any of those pre-listed items. And then there's just an open narrative field for you to say, how did you spend the funding? How did you utilize that funding? So we encourage you to fill that out as soon as you're able to. But remember that report is due October 31st at the latest.
Brad?
Yes.
We've got a question looking for clarification about the due date for the FRF.
For the FRF, we do not know the due date yet because we do not know when they're actually going to be sent out to everybody. So I would assume it could be on October 31st. However, it could even be delayed later than that if we're not able to get the if the FRFs are not out to each and every consortium during that time by the end of this month. And then Karen, you asked if there's a PDF of the questions for this final outcomes report. We do have that information in the email that we sent to each of the consortium managers. We did have a Word document. I think it was a Word document. It could have been a PDF. I can't remember, but we listed all the answer or all the questions out on the form. FYI though, if you go to the link, I think you see the entire form all at once. I don't think there are any page breaks, so you can see all the questions if you just go to the link as well. But we did send a list of all the questions in the email. And we will send that email out again in the next week or two. And thank you to Neil for putting the link to the form in the chat. Okay. Any other questions before I turn it over to Jody? If you have any additional questions, you can continue to put those in the chat and we can address those during our Q&A period. Okay, Jody, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. So I want to remind everyone that we are restarting the regular annual cycle of having 5-year narratives due. So just a reminder, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, that 5-year narrative is your consortium's application for reauthorization to continue to receive state ABE funds annually every year. These are screenshots of some narratives submitted over the last few years. We used to do these in binders and then they were just sat on a shelf. And now we have fully transitioned to having the 5-year narrative be a completely online set of documents. And I think that is a really fantastic development in 5-year narratives. So on the next slide is the cohort of consortia who are scheduled to submit a narrative in 2023. So remember, we have all of our consortia, our grantees kind of divided up into groups year over year. And so these in the blue box on the left, there are 6 consortia that are on deck to submit narratives in June of 2023. So hopefully, hopefully you've heard me, if you work for one of those consortia, you've heard me say this before, but just to make sure for those folks that you have on your calendar that there will be a workshop on November 2nd. That will definitely be virtual. You do not have to worry about traveling. And for now, we would like you to kind of hold on to that full day, and we will be working very soon to get more information about the plan for that day out to this specific group of consortia. Then those narratives are due on June 1st. And I also want this group of consortia to have this on your radar. So remember, part of the process is the year before you are required to submit your narrative, the very first step in that process is to review narratives from the year before. So this group of consortia in the blue box on the right here this is the 2024 narrative cohort. So if you work in one of those consortia, then please be thinking and remembering that you will be asked to review narratives in June this upcoming year. So the narratives will be due on June 1st. I will ask for at least one, probably more reviewers from each consortium, depending on your size. And your reviewers will read and score those narratives, and then we will gather the whole group again virtually sometime toward the end of June to compile our feedback and our scores. So we will also be communicating out to this cohort of programs about more plans about that, but be sure you've kind of got that on your radar as you're planning this current program year. Laura, excellent question about 2021 narratives. Thank you for putting that back on my radar. Yeah, hopefully I will get a chance to do that soon. Yeah, thanks for that reminder that they aren't there yet. No, hang on. Are they not there because of the year we missed? No, that was right. We didn't do any narratives in 2022, but yeah, the 2021 ones could certainly be there. So thanks for mentioning that, Laura. Okay, so I think, yeah, that is what you need to know about 5-year narratives. Yes, congratulations to anyone who's retiring before your before your next narrative due date. We have seen a little bit of a trend that way of people deciding when to end their career as an adult education manager based on when their next narrative is due. All right, but looking forward to restarting that narrative process this year. Also, I just want to give you a final plug, a reminder that's relevant this time of year, although only, for a few more days here. But remember that there is a provision in state statute that allows you to spend up any unspent state adult education dollars from the previous fiscal year in the first quarter of this fiscal year. So the time of year when you can do that is between July 1 and September 30th. So if you did not spend out all of those fiscal year 22 funds by June 30th, you're still in the time frame where you could do that, although it's getting close to the end. You can spend up to 20% of funds that way. So we really do encourage you to use up all of your funds. I know this past year, because of that additional ABE funding, you had lots of, kind of leeway in terms of technology or curriculum projects. But, we encourage you to use all of those funds if you can, because otherwise they are lost to our system. They just go back into the general state fund. The only thing you need to be really, really careful about is to work with your accounting staff, your business office staff, and make sure that those expenditures are course coded correctly. So if you're doing it right now in July, August, September this year for fiscal year 22 funds, the code for that is 002. And on the next slide, I just give you the lowdown. Now the codes for the next few years are logical. So the code you'll be using this year for last year's funds is 002. A year from now, you'll use 003, etc. So those should be easy to remember for a few more years until the decade turns over. Then it gets complicated for a couple of years again. All right. At this point, I want to take a little bit of time to talk some more about the issue of contact hours and sort of funding, looking forward in terms of funding, not for the current fiscal year, but the upcoming fiscal year for 23-24. So several important notes about this. First, hopefully you all are aware and you realize if you've been around for a little bit, we used a count of hours from that pre-COVID time period, that March to March, 2019 to 2020, we used that count of hours 3 times for 3 years in order to just keep everybody level and try to minimize any, disruption in funding based on COVID disruptions. That strategy is finished. So moving forward, we are shifting back to the way that the formula works and the way that contact hours are used in the funding formula as defined in state statute. So what that means is that hours from May 1st of this year through April 30th of next year will be used to calculate funding. We want to remind you and make sure you all understand that the overall total amount of state funding available will very likely remain the same or increase just a little bit as it has, most years in recent years. But this shift back to using those actual hours is probably going to mean that there is a little bit more variation between individual consortia and grantees. One thing this means is that it's not possible for every consortium and every grantee to go down in funding because the pot will be the same size. But it is possible that some consortia, some grantees might see a reduction, and that will mean that other consortia and other grantees will see an increase. And so what we're trying to do this year is to help everybody kind of have as much information as possible so you can wrap your head around what the possibilities are. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict this for anybody, accurately necessarily, but we do want you to sort of understand some of the factors at play. So our team at MDE is really thinking about this issue. The Literacy Action Network folks are also thinking about this issue. And over the course of this current program year, we'll periodically try to be giving you information and updates and support around this and sort of space to talk about it. So I have a little bit of information to share with you on this topic. So at this point, what we can start doing is we can start comparing statewide contact hours for this current year that we are in, or the current contact hour reporting period that we were in, with the same time period before COVID. So that's really, we kind of had these couple of years where the actual count of contact hours didn't matter for funding. So what we can do now is compare this year to the last year that really counted, which was 2019. So we have sort of 3 months worth of contact hour totals that we can compare. We can compare May, June, and July in 2019 to May, June, and July of this year, 2022. So if you look at that data on the screen, you can see that in 2019, in those 3 months, there are 927,000 hours. Compared to 2022, in that same time period in 2022, there are about 655,000 contact hours statewide. That's the statewide total. What that points to is, at least for those 3 months, that was a statewide decline of 29%. So what you can do with that number is you can take a look at your consortium or your program's contact hours in SID for this time period, for these 2 time periods in May, June, July 2019, May, June, July 2022, and see what your decline is. I believe for all of you, there is a decline. If the decrease in your program is right around 30%, then okay, we're doing we're level with the state. That's that might predict, if the trend line continues, that might predict roughly level funding for next year in terms of contact hour revenue. You can, if your decrease is significantly more than 30%, then that could point to the possibility of a decrease in funding. If your contact hour decrease is a lot less than 30%, then that might point to an increase in funding. So just a very, very general, small piece of math that you can start doing at this point. However, there are a few things that, make this complicated, and that we want you to keep in mind as you're trying to work this math and, trying to predict the future here. So, and what's important to know, and the reason you want to sort of compare your actual contact hour increase or decrease to the statewide decrease is that the fact that when that total amount of funding, our total statewide pot of funding stays the same, if that happens and contact hours go down, so if there are fewer contact hours across the state, the result is, it's a math problem essentially, the result is that the contact hour rate goes up. At this point, it seems really likely that that is going to happen for 23-24 funding. So each hour is likely going to be worth more or a higher rate than the last few years. So an important thing to know is that it's not just that any program can increase, exorbitant amounts, because there are some caps at play that limit those things. So one cap is that there is a contact hour revenue growth cap of 11%. So regardless of what the contact hour rate is, regardless of the amount per hour, your consortium cannot get more than 11% more specifically in contact hour revenue. So that's not including the base aid, the population aid, the other portions of the formula that are not tied to contact hours. But the portion of the formula that's tied to contact hours, that can't grow more than 11% from year to year. So that's one cap that may come into play. And if the contact hour rate goes up, that may come into play for more consortia this year than it has in the past. The second bullet is about the entire pot of funding. When you put all of the different streams of funding, the different pots of funding together, including that base aid, population aid, the LEP aid, and contact hour aid, you put all those together and then divide it by contact hours, there's a cap of $22 per hour. This will mean that programs that are hitting that $22 per hour cap if your contact hours are lower this upcoming year, then obviously that means a lower amount of funding. So I'm going to take a quick second to look and see if there are any of these questions that we can answer today. Yeah, I think I will try to answer questions really quickly. How do caps come into play when a new consortium gains a member? Good question, Chelsea. We do account for that. So we do sort of expand the cap to include that addition of hours from the new member. So you wouldn't get penalized from that. Sally, that 11% growth is from year to year. So it will look at for fiscal year 23, there cannot be more than 11% growth from what the consortium was awarded in fiscal year 22, specifically in contact hour revenue, not the total award. I think, Matt, that was your question as well, that contact hour revenue growth. Remember, it's not about growth in hours. It is about growth in revenue. So all consortia have had equal, even, flat revenue for the last 3 years. So it will be compared to whatever that total amount of contact hour revenue that the consortium received last fiscal year. For the upcoming fiscal year, that piece of funding cannot be more than 11% more. So, okay, I think I've gotten that. I think, Susie, that's your question as well. So hopefully I've answered that. All right. Oh, Susan, you are up. Wow, that's really interesting. So I would say if your contact hours are up, then it's almost certain, if that trend continues across the year, it's almost certain you're going to hit that 11% growth cap. So just sort of plan on that. Okay, so to wrap this up and to keep us moving, the bottom line is it's going to be tricky to predict exactly how funding is going to play out for this upcoming year. Far trickier than it has been for the last 3 years. We have been for the last 3 years able to really just hold things steady, and we can no longer do that. So ultimately, while we know that that is sort of anxiety inducing and feels uncertain, and we recognize that and acknowledge that, really the message from our team at this point is for you to plan and deliver really solid adult education programming in your community. Like, for you to be addressing the needs of the folks who are showing up at your door, and to be doing that in high quality, efficient ways. And we just have to all sort of move forward with the assumption that hours and funding will follow high quality programming that meets our community's needs. So thank you for your continued intention to do that. I know that is what you are trying to do, but I know it's also concerning that, how many contact hours are we accruing is a concerning question, and we recognize that. So we will continue this conversation over the course of this year. We will plan to discuss this more at the fall managers meeting on November 10th. This year, our MDE team is working together with LAN Literacy Action Network to think about what do we communicate about this, when and what kind of information is helpful to put out. So at this point, it would be really helpful if you all have additional questions, or if this brings up additional thoughts, or if there's some piece of this that isn't clear or something else you'd like to think about or talk about. We would love to have that information as we plan for the fall manager meeting on November 10th. So please do put in the chat any additional questions, any thoughts for what kind of additional information would be helpful, what kind of discussion or answers you might hope to be able to think a little bit more at the fall manager meeting. So please do share if you have any other thoughts for us on that. And yeah, I think I'm going to turn it over to Brandy at this point.
Thank you so much, Jody. So we're going to go into high school equivalency, and you're going to be seeing that HSE out and about on communication. So we just want to reiterate how we are moving into a 2 high school equivalency testing state as we're bringing on HiSET. And so it's just nice to always remember that we are HSE. So the first thing that we want to talk about is with GED, we have two options of purchasing our vouchers. I know that communication has gone out before in the past, but we wanted to highlight that in recent, you've had experience with GED Marketplace, but now they have what's called the GED Direct, which is on your manager's platform. And so next slide, please. The reason that they created this was because there was an outcry of the vouchers and the headache with all of the spreadsheets, and what about being able to assign those to students. So the solution was creating that GED Direct. And this allows educators to purchase those GED ready tests and assign them directly to the students. And those benefits, of course, students can access their ready tests directly in their GED account once they sign in. There's no more spreadsheets or voucher codes to manage, and there's no expiration dates anymore. Next slide, please. Next slide.
I am wondering if we've lost Brad.
Possibly.
Yes, he lost his internet. Neil, thank you for sharing your
Neil,
screen.
thank you so much. Always nice to have the next scenario. So this slide explains where do you find that GED Direct. Of course, when you log into your navigation bar, over on the top, you're going to see that GED Direct, and then you'll see the option of buying, managing, or order history. As you look to the right on the screen, it talks about the direct discount. So the more you buy, the price goes down in unit size. So the GED ready tests, they retail for $6.99. And of course, the direct price is $5 per test. Next slide, please. So assigning those to the students. Once you have your vouchers purchased, you can assign those. As you can see on the top left, you'll hit the assign button under the manage assignments. And then what you'll do is, just as like a regular search option, you will search for the students that you have access to. So making sure that those students are in your program and that you have that access to search for. It will filter to or default to last name, but you can change that, is from what I was told. Next slide. And then on the top left, as you can see, you can assign what type of test. So if it's GED ready, or if it's the in-person or even online proctored. And then on the bottom right, as you can see, then you assign this test subject for the individual. Next slide, please. And then, can I unassign? That's usually a question, and the answer is yes. So when you have designated vouchers assigned to your students, as you can see in that top left, it says not started. And then in the little parentheses, we see, or not parentheses, you see the word unassigned. So you can always unassign the test or the voucher that you gave out. And what that does, it just brings it back into your pool. And then you can just reassign another voucher to another student if need be. Next slide, please. So do you have questions? Important information. What you do with the GED Marketplace, that's where you are able to purchase those $10, $15, $20, and $26 vouchers. So please take note that it's different than the direct, which you will be paying full price for. So we just want to make sure that you understand the difference between those two for when you're using the subsidy. So it's so if you continue to want to purchase through the marketplace, you can always have that option. This is just another option. If you do have questions, you can always reach out to Melissa Holstrand, which is our GED individual for Minnesota, and she is always available to answer any further questions that you have. I see a question, are we still able to use the vouchers previously purchased? Yes, from what I've been told, those vouchers are still accessible, and they're not going to be deleted. I think if they're going to expire, I read that you have to reach out to Melissa and they can push those expiration dates back. But the ones that you have currently purchased, you don't have to throw those away. Is there any other questions? Okay, and then Astrid has shared the GED Direct slides in the chat as well. So there are more slides to this information. I just wanted to give you a very quick snippet of what it looks like. And of course, you can go into those slides. I see Stacy's question, will we be able to use the GED Direct for our students needing an age waiver soon? So you still will need to complete the age waiver is what I'm understanding with that question. And then once it's completed, you'll be able to assign those vouchers after that. Is that what your question was, Stacy? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Currently their accounts are set up to the point where you can assign a test that day.
So they have to take the GED Ready in order to get the age waiver, but we can't assign the GED Ready on GED Direct until after they have the age waiver. There's kind of a little catch-22
Oh,
there.
perfect. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Let me discuss that a little bit further with our team about how we want to go about that and seeing what the options are with GED and Melissa. And I will get back directly to you specifically, as well as put some communication out for everybody. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Next slide, please. So now we're moving into the HiSET. So for the HiSET pilot, we are here at Fall South North Regionals. So somewhere in our timeline of the pilot, we are working on a goal of it beginning in October. And we are hoping to have 10 to 12 testing sites with corrections included to participate in that pilot. Communication went out when I first started back in June about if anyone wanted to participate and become a pilot test center. And then individuals that did sign up for that were given information on how to be contacted and start the process. So we are somewhere in the middle of application and contract for their processes of being completed and moving into training. So then once we get the training done, then we'll have some pilot centers up and running, hopefully. Our goal is from all the information, the data collected between October to December, we're going to have an understanding of how the HiSET works for our state and our students, as well as best practices. So then at the beginning of the new year, we will be able to open up more test centers that choose to deliver the HiSET to our state as well. Next slide, please. So the HiSET official practice tests are those OPT vouchers. If you haven't heard about it, we have given communication out to our consortium managers on how to get access to those OPT vouchers for staff and now for students. So if your program has not received communication on how to get their hands on some OPT vouchers for your staff to take any practice tests that they would like, please reach out to your consortium manager. Or if the communication has been lost throughout email graveyards, as sometimes it happens, you can always reach out to me again and I can send that communication out again for everyone. It's a very easy step. You decide on an individual either for one site, or you can decide on having an individual for your entire program. And that individual will be in charge of delivering and assigning those vouchers. So the information comes from Essential Ed, it's given to them on how to set up the account, and then they assign those vouchers out to anyone, and then of course students as well. So it'll be a little bit easier on assigning those out when students start wanting to take the HiSET practice. Next slide, please. And lastly, we had our HiSET debriefing webinars the past 2 weeks. We want to give a very special thanks out to Atlas, especially Christine Kelly and Lindsay Boost, because they were able to create such an amazing webinar, really give out some in-depth conversation and information about what those math and science practice tests look like, and as well as the reading, writing, and the social studies. We had about 25 to 30 people at each webinar, some really good conversations, breakout sessions, and just an understanding of what our practice tests look like with the HiSET, and maybe possibly what our curriculum has already and what we need to look for in bringing the HiSET to our students here in Minnesota. And that's all the information. Is there any questions specifically? I see math science session. Astrid's putting that out on the chat as well. And if there's anything that you need, you can always email me. And I am going to give it over to professional development with Astrid.
Great, thank you, Brandy. So let's kick off here with some information about some upcoming opportunities to learn more about the HiSET. As Brandy said, the practice test debriefing webinars were a great way to start digging in and looking at the similarities and differences between the GED and the HiSET and start reflecting on impacts for instruction. And coming up here in October, we're going to have a set of webinars delivered by HiSET staff that will be a sort of a deep dive into each of the content area tests. So we'll start with reading comprehension across the subtests. So that'll be reading, social studies, and science. Then a webinar on the writing test. And then finally, one focused on the math test, as well as educator and test taker resources. So this will be a great opportunity to really dig into those details about the tests. We also have some opportunities to learn more about the HiSET at our fall regionals, at the South and North regionals. There will be a session at each one of those regionals focused specifically on the HiSET language arts writing test. We anticipate that there will be a lot of questions about that test, since one difference is that the HiSET does have a separate writing test, unlike the GED. So we'll dig into some of those details at the regional. There'll also be an opportunity to participate in a HiSET practice test debriefing discussion. If you didn't make it to the practice test debriefing webinars, or if you'd like to continue that conversation, you'll have the opportunity to do so at the regionals. So hope to see you at one of those events. Go to the next slide. Looking ahead to the end of this week, we have our annual Math Institute that will be virtual again this Friday, September 23rd from 9 to 3. We're really excited about our guest presenter this year. Those of you who have a math background may know Dan Meyer. He's kind of a hero in math circles. He's internationally known math educator. He's Chief Academic Officer at Desmos and just a really engaging presenter. So he'll be with us for the morning, and in the afternoon, we will have breakout sessions led by local math presenters. And there will be a session specifically focused on math leaders and thinking about how math is offered in your programs, talking about some of the challenges to math offerings and ways to expand and improve math in your program. So if you're not yet registered, really encourage you to register for that, and encourage your instructors to attend as well. Also, coming up later this month, we have our first in-person regional in over 2.5 years. We'll be in Mankato Friday, September 30th, and then in October 13th and 14th, up in Walker, and we are really excited to see folks in person. I do want to mention that as I emailed to the South managers yesterday, registration is very low for the South Regional. We currently only have 15 people registered. So if you or your staff are planning to attend, just ask that you get registered as soon as possible. We need to give information to the hotel for catering, and then also just make a decision about whether to move forward with the event. We currently have 4 concurrent session slots happening in each slot. So we want to make sure that there are actually people in those sessions. So if you have not registered, it would be helpful if you could just put in the chat if either you and your staff are not planning on attending this year, or if you are still planning on registering, how many people you anticipate will be registering. That'll be helpful as we work with the Atlas staff to make plans for those events. So as always, the regionals will have a variety of topics in relicensure areas, as well as other hot topics that we've heard from you that you want to discuss and learn about. Let's go to the next slide. Looking ahead, a little snapshot so you can mark your calendar for the variety of events coming up this fall and winter. As we mentioned, we've got the Math Institute, North and South Regionals, also have the Support Services Conference, which will be virtual and held on November 17th and 18th this year, and the Volunteer Management Conference coming up December 2nd, that will be virtual. And then Language and Literacy Institute will be returning to an in-person event at the end of January. Looking all the way ahead to spring, April 28th is the date for our spring virtual conference. That'll be a statewide conference. So please mark your calendars. On the next slide, you can see a place you can go to get a comprehensive list of all of the PD events that have been scheduled so far for this year. It's linked from our Minnesota Adult Education PD catalog. Let's go to the next slide. We know we've heard from many of you that you have a variety of new staff that have come on board over the past couple of years. We want to encourage you to send them to the AB Foundation's conference, online training that is hosted through Atlas, and encourage you to have them participate in the complement webinar series that we are going to be offering. So staff can go through the online training and then come to the webinar to get some further clarification, ask their questions, and meet other new staff from around the state. Let's go to the next slide. Another opportunity to get some foundational information is through our Ccrs Foundation's refresher webinars. We know that practitioners and programs have been juggling a lot over the past couple of years. CCRS may not have been at the top of your list. So here's an opportunity to get refreshed. If you want to dig into the content standards work again, you can attend one or both of these webinars. It will be the same webinar on October 5th and October 12th. You will have the option to join an ELA breakout group or a math breakout group. So if you want a refresher in both content areas, you would have the option to attend both webinars and choose one content area for one webinar and the other content area for the other webinar. And thanks so much to Brad for putting all the chats, the links in the chat. And I will pause at the end of this section and we'll take any questions that you have. Also want to make sure that folks are aware of the Casas and Tabe implementation training opportunities coming up. In the past, when we met in person for Summer Institute, we frequently offered Casas and Tabe implementation training. Since that conference was held virtually this year, we are offering another opportunity to get this training. And just a reminder that anyone who is involved in testing at your sites needs to have gone through this implementation training and complete some sort of refresher or recertification training every 5 years. So we've got the links and information about those trainings coming up on October 7th. Also want to make sure that people are aware of a brand new course focused on the North Star digital literacy standards and strategies for integrating them into your instruction. So again, if you have new staff, if you feel like a refresher would be beneficial, if you'd like to have an increased emphasis on digital literacy integration in your program, this is an excellent opportunity to really learn a little bit more about the standards and think about how to integrate them into instruction. And that course was just recently launched at Summer Institute. We're really excited about it and hope that many people will take advantage of that training opportunity. Another standards training opportunity focused on ACES Transitions Integration Framework. If you would like an ACES refresher and you're going to be at the North Regional in Walker, there will be a session on Thursday afternoon giving folks the opportunity to either get refreshed or if you're new to the field, get an overview of our Transitions Integration Framework. In addition, at those fall regionals, there will be a session focused on the ACES TIF sample lesson plans and an updated lesson planning template. ACES is getting a bit of a refresh. It's been over 10 years since we initially developed and launched the Transitions Integration Framework. So Stephanie Summers, along with an excellent team of professionals from around the state, are working to update some of the supporting materials around ACES TIF. And they'll be sharing that through a webinar series coming this winter and spring. Let's see the dates for those here at the bottom of the slide. Let's go to the next slide. Also want to make sure people are aware of an upcoming TVM certification webinar, Monday, October 3rd. This webinar is part of the certification process. So as a reminder, to get certified, to use the teacher verification model, teachers need to go through the distance and blended learning basics for Minnesota Adult Education online course, including the TVM module, and develop a sample lesson and participate in a certification webinar. So if you have teachers who are interested in getting certified, you've got links here for more information about that process, and the link to register for the webinar is embedded in the course. Finally, want to make sure that people are registered with the Minnesota Adult Education Network, the Mighty Networks group. This is an opportunity to have statewide conversations in a variety of contexts and content areas. Neil recently sent out an email from Marisa Giesler, who's been managing these groups, reminding folks to check your settings in your Mighty Networks account to make sure that your notifications have not been turned off. It came to our attention that for many folks, the notifications were automatically turned off. So please go in and make sure that you are receiving your notifications so that you can continue to participate in those groups. Okay, let me turn to the chat. I wonder if Brad can help me out with any questions that have not been answered.
Yeah, one question, Astrid, from Karen Walters. Will the CCRS Foundation's webinars be recorded? And the reason Karen's asking is they were thinking maybe the teachers could watch that, the recordings and the PLC there if they're recorded.
That is a great idea to take that back. I would assume so. I know that because they are going to be going into breakout rooms, I'll need to follow up with Christine and Lindsay to check into the details about how that will work and get back to you, Karen.
Excellent. And then another question came from Tracy Krybaum, and I think this was while you're talking about the Casas and Tabe implementation trainings. Tracy asked if those trainings also count for renewal. And I was asking Tracy if what Tracy meant by that is if those implementation trainings count as the recertification for those tests, which is required at least once every 5 years. But I'm not sure, Tracy, if you want to clarify a little bit more about what your question means. Okay.
Looks like yes.
Yes, that is what she meant.
Yes. So yes, they would count as a recertification in those test areas. And then I believe that there will also be an opportunity for recertification at the Support Services Conference.
Excellent. And then the final question that I've seen that's been entered thus far, with the Spring Virtual Conference, is that the same as the Metro Regional?
No, it is not. The Spring Virtual Conference will be a virtual event open to the entire state.
And there will be no in-person regionals for the spring, correct?
There will not. Yes, we based on feedback that we got from the field, it seems that there are some folks who are very interested in meeting in person, others who prefer virtual. So we're trying to balance the needs and interests and the budget to provide a variety of different types of opportunities. And Linda, thank you for chiming in and confirming that there will be recertification for Casas and Tabe at the support staff conference. And Linda, in addition to those recertification sessions on Friday, there will also be implementation trainings on Thursday as well, correct? Yes, okay, Linda's confirming that they'll have that opportunity on Thursday as well for the implementation training. And Eric, yes, the spring virtual conference will be Friday, April 28th. So yes, please mark your calendars. Any other professional development questions? Or at this point, any other questions about any of the material that's been shared today or any other topics?
Please feel free to chime in with any questions you have in the chat, or you can click to raise your hand and we can and you can ask your questions verbally as well. While you're thinking about what questions you might have, let's go to the next slide. Just a reminder that all of the materials, including the recording, the slides, and any handouts that we gave during the session, all of those will be available on the Literacy Action Network website. So please look there for any of that. Also, if we just another on the next slide, we did our fall manager meeting is November 10th. That will be we want to hear from you. Please share in the chat. What would you like to discuss at the fall manager meeting? Please let us know. Just say fall manager meeting topic and let us know. We want to make sure that we plan this and have this designed to meet your needs. So please let us know what you would like to discuss at the fall manager meeting. On the next slide, our next web chat will be next year, Wednesday, February 1st from 1 to 2:30. So please mark your calendars. And I think registration is already on the Atlas calendar so for that event. And on the next slide here, just a reminder that immediately after this session, we'll give you about a 5-minute stretch break. And then the Literacy Minnesota will take us through a conversation on strategic approaches to distance learning. And it's, again, a reminder, this is right in the same webinar. You do not need to log off or log into any other webinar. You can stay right here for that conversation. So we thank Literacy Minnesota for leading that conversation. And ultimately on the next slide, thank you for all of the wonderful work that you're doing. Yes, this is National Adult Education and Family Literacy Weekend, so you get a special thank you, but you do amazing work each and every day, each and every week, each and every year. And thank you for all of that wonderful work that you do. And thank you for reaching our communities, reaching our learners, and making such a strong impact on the field of adult education. Thank you, whether you're a teacher, an administrator, a support professional, a volunteer, a paraprofessional, a learner that maybe is rising up in the leadership ranks within adult education. Thank you for your work and thank you for everything that you do. And then we'll go to the next slide and make sure we have additional conversation about questions. Okay, and I know we've had some ideas and conversation or questions that have come in. So Astrid, I'm wondering if you can help me here.
A lot of the chats that are coming in are suggestions or comments related to the fall manager meeting. So thanks for that input. Jill's asking, was the lifting of the $22 cap discussed?
Good question, and I can let you know we just Jody did discuss the existence of the $22 cap, but the $22 cap is currently set in state statute. So any lifting of that would have to be passed by the Minnesota State Legislature. Literacy Action Network put forward a proposal last year to increase that or raise that cap, and the Minnesota Department of Education supported the raising of that cap, and we're putting a proposal forward through the department and to the governor to put that into the governor's budget bill. So we hope that will get proposed and passed again, or that it will get passed actually this year in the state legislature. So stay tuned on that. That will be an issue that will get resolved hopefully in 2023. Jody, did you want to add anything there about that?
Not really, Brad, but yeah, just to reiterate that here at MDE, what our team is doing is implementing what state statute says in terms of how we have to distribute out the funding. So as Brad says, that change would have to happen at the legislature. We do not have authority on our team to make that change. So Jill, I would say in terms of how you can help is you can, and any of you listening are welcome to get involved with Literacy Action Network, which is our membership organization, and specifically the Legislative Committee of Literacy Action Network, because that is where that's the place for advocacy for changing state statute. So.
Excellent. Great point, Jody. Thank you for bringing that up.
We also had a question from Karen wondering about bringing data to the fall manager meetings about their hours. I think at this point, if you just want to wait for our invite to the meeting, and we can share some more information at that point about what you might need to do or bring prior to the meeting. We also had a question about when the registration would be sent out for the fall managers meeting. We are still looking at finalizing a location, and I think we'll be able to send out registration information as soon as that is finalized.
I will add, Karen, that's an interesting idea, actually. I hadn't thought of that, but I'm going to contemplate that and talk to the rest of the team, and maybe, a little bit of pre-work before that manager meeting might actually be really useful for everybody. So thanks for that idea. But yes, as Astrid said, we'll be sure if we are asking you to bring anything specific or do anything specific for that meeting, we'll make sure to communicate that as we communicate out details for registration and such.
Patrick also is reminding everyone in the chat that the Literacy Minnesota Award nominations are due this Friday, the 23rd, and he's put the link to those nomination forms in the chat. Thanks, Patrick. Wendy, I think maybe we can pause the recording at this point.
I am let Tom get us going. Go ahead, Tom.
So I just want to mention that this is a presentation from the Distance Learning Tech Support Supplemental Services Grant, which is through Literacy Minnesota. And I'm the grants manager for that project, and Susan is the manager for the grant. So that's what we are. So if you want to go ahead and go to the first slide. One of our thoughts was we were at the Ideal Consortium conference this in August, and as we listened to this is a consortium of states that get together every year to share ideas and experiences around tech and distance learning. And as we listened to people talk, it became kind of clear that we are, although it's debatable whether COVID pandemic is over or not, we are through the worst of the lockdown that happened and the complete chaos that ensued, both for many of us, probably all of us, personally and professionally, for quite some period of time. And there was such a huge initial shock of trying to convert all of our services to online learning, and then all the innovations and efforts that we've gone through in the past 3 years, that it felt like was a time now that we could step back a little bit and start thinking strategically about what's needed as we start trying to rebuild our programs in a useful way. So we know that the briefly what's currently and in the last 3 years has happened. Basically overnight, we had to convert all of our services to online, and that was, very difficult for everyone. People made valiant efforts and were fairly successful given the situation. However, as everybody knows, there was still a huge fall off in contact hours for a whole lot of reasons. People were isolated in their homes. Some people didn't have access to technology. Some learners didn't know how to, nor maybe were interested in online learning. People were trying to take care of their children and work from home, and it was just very chaotic. And that has led now to, of course, some of the things we were talking about during the web chat about concern regarding building up our hours again and the contact hours needed for funding. And I know every consortium manager and probably most teachers are concerned about this. One of the realities is that many of our potential students are now working, which is good in many ways, but it really creates limitations on when and how they can attend classes. So that's one of the situations really confronting us that we need to think very carefully about. I'll go to the next slide. So now we have the opportunity, we hope and think, to step back just a little bit. We're past the immediate crisis period, and we're needing to rebuild our programs and to start charting new directions, creating what we hope will be a more normal, and whatever normal means, situation for all of us and for our learners. And we can start hopefully reflecting in an intentional way about creating programming that's really based on student needs, but also over time will hopefully help rebuild our programs and our contact hours to the level that we'd like. Whether it ever approaches pre-pandemic levels is debatable, but we certainly want to make sure that we're meeting as many of the needs statewide for our services as we possibly can. Next slide.
And I think I'm taking it over from here. So one of the things that Tom and I wanted to do was create some space for you all as managers today to talk with each other and think about these strategic questions about what programming is needed and what are your students looking for and what are your teacher capacities and all of that sort of thing. So I think what we're going to do is lay out some of the factors and the questions. We're not going to tell you the answers, but we hope that we can give you a framework of things to think about in your conversation. And then we'll have some breakout room time where you can meet with a small group of other managers in this space with a note-taking document where you can write down your ideas and questions and then report them back to the whole group. So we're going to start with our factors to consider. And one of the things that's really changed since pre-pandemic is that we have so many different options for how we offer programming now. It's not just in-person class and study online in a distance learning platform. We all have online classes. We have maybe online blended classes that meet sometimes in person and sometimes online. We have HiFlex as an option where both modalities are being done at the same time. We have regular old in-person classes. We have asynchronous distance learning, but even that has expanded because now we have teacher-created courses. We have TBM, so there's new options even there. So do we actually have a good sense of what our students prefer? What are they looking for? Do we need to survey learners or potential learners in our communities to find out what modalities of learning are they looking for? We have a learner in one of our evening programs right now who previously was coming to class regularly, and now because, again, of the hot labor market, she's working. She can only come to class 1 day a week, but she wants to continue to study. So she's doing a lot of asynchronous distance learning work on days she can't come to class, right? That's a flexible, adaptable way of providing programming for a student who's otherwise might simply stop out, right? But if we're not talking to our students, if we're not listening, we might not have the types of programming available that best meet all of their needs. And then also thinking about program capacity. teaching a HiFlex class or a hybrid online blended class, that takes a different skill set than teaching an in-person class does. And our teachers have upskilled hugely over the pandemic when everybody had to transition, but now transitioning back to in-person might feel a little bit jarring. I felt that way just thinking about planning for an in-person conference. Like, I don't know how to do this anymore. All I've done for the last 2.5 years is webinars. How do I do an in-person session anymore? I think teachers might struggle with that as well, like remembering their routines and the classroom management skills that they might not have been keeping up or been doing very differently in an online learning setting. So what teacher skills and capacities do you have? Are you going to need professional development on any of those topics? What's your capacity as a manager to sort of plan for all of this? Do you have funding to purchase distance learning platforms? Do you have the technology you need for a HiFlex class? Do you have the space required for a HiFlex class? Because you can't necessarily do that in any old classroom. So thinking about your capacity and how well that matches up with what students are looking for, I think are some factors you want to think about. But there's other stuff too, scheduling preferences, especially with the hot labor market and people working a great deal. Do we have to think about having classes more in the evening or maybe on weekends even, because that's when they're available to come to class? So do we have a good sense of when students are available and interested in coming to class? And then also instructional needs may be shifting. Is there more of interest in career pathway programming? Are you going to be offering the HiSET at your testing center? Things like that. Or do you have new demographics coming in? Are you seeing newly resettled Afghan refugees, for example? So, thinking about the instructional needs with the changing community that you're serving, is there anything new and different that you think you probably need to offer to meet those needs? And I do see a lot of stuff happening in the chat, and I'm going to try and look at that in a minute after I talk a little bit about platforms, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Tom. So another thing to think about is if you're doing asynchronous distance learning work is the platforms that you have. So we have something like 50 some platforms approved for proxy hours in Minnesota now. Have you added any new ones in recent years? If not, have you looked at what's available to see if there's something that might better fit your needs? And then do the platforms you have fit your instructional model? Because some are very teacher oriented, where teachers can create and assign their own lessons and be really customized. And others are really more learner driven, where the learner maybe takes a diagnostic assessment and then is provided with a customized learning pathway, which is very learner centered, but it doesn't lend itself as well to a blended model, because in a blended model, the teacher needs to be able to merge together the in-person and the online learning. And that's very difficult to do if everybody is doing something different in their online. So thinking about, do the platforms I have really meet what I'm trying to do instructionally? And if not, is there something that might be a better fit? What are your teachers already comfortable using? If you want to implement something and it's totally new to your teachers, what platform specific training might you need for that? And then also thinking creatively, beyond platforms, do you want to implement teacher verification model? Do you have teachers who are interested in using a learning management system to build out their own teacher created courses? Because those are options that we have now too. And I think they provide teachers more flexibility and creativity, but they also create a lot of work, right? Because with a platform, the curriculum is made for you. If you're going in the teacher created route, the teacher needs to do all of that curriculum design work themselves. So is that something that you're interested in doing in your program? So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to pause the share, and I'm going to check out the chat and see if there's anything I need to respond to here.
I haven't seen anything.
Okay. I think these are maybe chats still from the previous part of the webinar. Yep.
New things
Oh.
added. But I don't think there's anything we need to respond to.
Okay, sounds good. Then I am going to turn it back over to you, Tom, to talk about student support needs.
One thing I just want to add on the platforms is that we have a very, very nice filtering mechanism built into the platform web pages, so that if you're looking for specific platforms that teach certain things or that are for certain levels of students, or basically anything you can think of, you can enter certain search terms and it'll bring up the platforms that best meet your needs. So I think I'm really proud that we designed that. I think it was originally Jason's idea, and it really works super well. So we work very hard at keeping that part of the website up and current and up to date with all the current platforms, and all as they change, we update the information on each of them. So
yes, and you can also contact us at the Distance Learning Support Desk too, if you are looking for something to meet specific kinds of requirements. Like, let's say you are looking for something that would work really well in a blended learning model, you know, contact us and we'll see what we can do to advise you.
So this is probably preaching to the choir to a certain extent when we talk about student support needs, because it's something that I think we're all quite aware of, but still a good thing to just go over quickly in terms of, as you're thinking about what sorts of classes you want to offer from the various types that are available. Important to think about what kinds of devices do your students have, what do they need. I think the extra money that we all received from the legislature over this last year helped many programs to really improve their technology. They were able to buy computers that were able to be lent out to students for their work. I think there's been a lot of work around increasing students' digital literacy and so on. But still, I know there are many students around the state who may not have devices, who don't have good internet reception in their homes. So really important to know what students need in terms of devices, internet access, and then just basic digital literacy skills training. And then, of course, not that we can always personally meet all of these needs, but really thinking about what students need in the way of transportation and childcare, and what can we do, if anything, to help them problem solve some of those things so that they are able to participate in classes both online and or in person. Next slide. Then also thinking about, Susan talked a little bit about this already, but program capacities and capacity, and I think that's a super important thing to think about. We have programs all around the state that are, some are very large, some are very small. The amount of financial and technological and other resources they have differs somewhat. So really thinking about your teachers and what are their strengths and capacities. I think a lot of teachers around the state, as well as managers, have vastly increased their technological skills and knowledge over the last 3 years. I'm also aware there are still people who don't feel completely comfortable, certainly teaching in an online capacity and even in a high flex situation, which can in some ways be even more challenging. So thinking about, once you've assessed your teacher's strengths and capacities, what PD is needed to facilitate online blended high flex classes. We're going to be offering a number of different cohort and one model, using the cohort model, a number of different classes over the next year through the tech grant, and also a number of one-time webinars, where we'll have a new page on our website just dedicated to listing all of the things that are available. But we want to hear from you also in terms of what do you need that we can help provide, the things that we already have scheduled, the things that we can schedule based on your needs. What are your funding constraints? You know, those are, different programs have different amounts of funding depending on how their size and whether they've hit the cap and things like that. What additional technology resources do you still need? I'm really curious about that. If anyone has anything to say about that in the chat in general, because my general sense is that programs overall are better off than they were a few years ago, but I'm just curious about that. And of course, always, what are our space locations, our space limitations? What are our locations? Seeing that issue from a different perspective when you're doing distance learning is important, because you have the space needed and the way it needs to be configured may be different. What are your funding resources? And then I think particularly important right now is continuing to look at what collaborative partners do you have now or that you can develop. As we were talking earlier in the webinar about working with employers and doing on-site learning and career prep and so on, that developing of collaborative partners is a really key part of helping programs to be able to successfully adapt to the evolving environment.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Hope I didn't cut you off by
No.
moving it on the slide. So we've been talking at you now for a good 15-20 minutes. And so I think now we want to give you all some time to have that small group discussion. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up breakout groups of 4 to 5 people in each group, and we'll have them for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I would like each group to identify a note taker and a reporter. And then for the note takers, I have a collaborative notes document. It's a Google Doc, and I'll be putting that in the chat in just a minute. And then it's set up as a forced copy link. So when you click that link, you'll get your own copy on Google Drive. And then you can fill all that in. And then if you have ideas that you think would be good to share back, if you can share that notes document that you take for your group back with me when you're done. Tom is considering whether or not we can use that information in some way, maybe to write an article for the newsletter or something like that. So if you have useful stuff in your notes doc, share it back with us when you're done with it. And then reporters, of course, be ready to report out to the whole group when you're done. So I'm going to pause the share here for a second and go grab that link, unless Astrid's already put it in the chat, but I don't.
No, I can't add, Susan, the one that was in the version I had was not, the link didn't work. So I need you to put that in the chat.
A couple of little tweaks, and then when I did that, it probably changed the URL. I'm sorry. So I will grab a new one here. And it is coming your way right now. There we go.
All right, I'm just going to test that out before we go into our breakouts.
Let me know if
that works for me. Any questions for Susan before we go into our breakout groups? And we'll, Susan,
couple of people have to leave at 3, and I understand. I have many meetings myself, so no problem.
How many minutes in the groups?
So it looks like we have 29 people. So how many groups do you think?
I'm going to do 5 groups. So I'm wondering how many minutes in the groups, just so people have a sense of that.
Let's do, can you do a 15-minute group with like a 2-minute timer countdown?
Somebody says they don't have access to the document, so I'm not sure what we
need.
So
Mary Kate, it's a forced copy link. So when you click on it, it'll ask you to make a copy for yourself. And you do have to have a Google account to do that. But we only need 1 per breakout room.
So you should be seeing the option to join a room. If you're having any difficulty getting into the room you were assigned, let me know and I can put you in your room.
It looks like there's only 2 people.
Yeah.
Is that room 3?
There were more. I'm gonna move. Let's move those folks.
A couple folks, or move them into another one.
I'm gonna move Karen into room 4. And Jean into room 2 or room 1.
Maybe room 1. There we go.
Okay, it looks like every room has at least 3 people. Let's see who's still here.
I kind of figured we might lose a bunch of people at 3 because I know a lot of people have a lot of things going on.
Yeah, so co-hosts, anyone who's assigned as a co-host, I did not put you in the room, so you can choose to join one of the rooms if you'd like.
Yeah, I see Brandy and Jody are still hanging around here too.
Let's see. Deb Hall.
Hey, I'm actually going to be popping off shortly if everything works well, because I've got some NRS stuff with Brad.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks for coming.
Deb, Jeannie, Laura, Monica, any of you still here and want some help getting into a room?
I'm probably screen sharing that with everybody. aren't I?
Yeah, I've seen that black box. That's so strange, Susan.
Yeah, it's something I'm used to. I usually present with Google Slides, and Google Slides doesn't do this. That's a PowerPoint thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, odd. It's just showing where the Zoom pop-ups are.
So I'm not sure, this happened to me for adult diploma too, where I wasn't able to set a timer. I'm not sure. Oh shoot, we're still recording.
Welcome back. I hope you had a good conversation in your small group breakouts. I apologize again for the sharing link not working. I have done that many times with Google Docs before, never had a problem. So things are always changing. I have to practice my digital resilience and learn to adapt to changing technological constraints like all of our learners do. So I would like to hear from the reporters in each group. What did you talk about? What can the DL team help you with? What PD questions do you have? What are you looking at for fall? Tell us what you talked about. And anybody want to volunteer to go first? Don't everybody go at once.
This is Karen from group 4.
Go ahead, Karen. You always volunteer. I appreciate you so much.
I'll get the party started. What the heck? Okay, so I don't have my document in front of me, but I just shared it with you, Susan. So we were talking about a couple of different things. One was, everybody agreed that we all want online learning to continue in some form, and we have it going now. We're never going to go back to 100% in person. We're always going to have distance learning things of different degrees in our programs now that COVID has ended, and it's not even over. But anyway, one of the things that we're trying to figure out, and several of us are talking about, is the balance of like how many students in an online class is appropriate depending on what kind of a class that is, how many can one reasonably support, either through having a number of people that you're just meeting with individually with platform work like a one-room schoolhouse, or having a synchronous meet where you have a lot of students, maybe they don't attend every day, but you have a lot of people coming, and how many can you reasonably engage online like that.
Mm-hmm.
To financially make that work. So
do you
there's
have any ballpark figures for that, Karen? It's like back of the napkin math, like how many students you think you need in an online class?
Well, that's what they're talking about, is how do you balance that? And I remember thinking back to when we had MindQuest Academy and we had like asynchronous learning, and you were emailing students back and forth and taking care of, and now it's more distance learning platforms in a one-room schoolhouse. How many people can you manage?
Right.
Do you have a person who in a one-room schoolhouse just manages all the online people, and then another person doing the in-person people, or do you do a mix of that for a person? That's what people are trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
But a bigger issue that I had brought up too, and this has come up in multiple conversations with people from other consortia, is people have been trying to figure out like what is the level gain data regarding people who are online versus people who are in class.
Yes.
And there a way to do some studies around that. I was just having a texting conversation with someone during the web chat today, and then I brought that up again in our little group, was, people have often said, is there any way that we could, in a high flex classroom, when we take attendance every day and SID, click this person's online today, this person's in class today, and because it can switch day to day, or some people are always online, some people are always in the room. Is there any way that we could figure out a way to be clicking attendance, this person's online, this person's at home, so that when we go to look at level gain data, we can go, wow, this person was mostly online this quarter and made a gain or didn't make a gain, where this person in that same class was this modality, did make a gain or didn't make a gain. What is the factor there? Because they're getting the same material, but they're getting a different modality, a different level of engagement potentially, depending on the talent of that teacher and their ability to engage everybody in that room online. So that's some of the things that we're thinking about right now in Mankato. And I know some of our Southwest programs, and Emily Watts just said she's also thinking about that. There's Emily chiming in. We're very interested in that in Osseo. So if there's
we are too on the distance learning team. We had a conversation with Jenny from Urban Planet about, is there anything we can do like reporting wise in SID? And Tom, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out what would be useful, and we're not getting quite as sophisticated yet, Karen, as like in one class who's doing better, doing worse, but just trying to figure out students in a high flex class versus a blended learning versus in-person versus all online. Are there differences there? And we were trying to figure some ways of reporting on that. Jenny says it's not a simple thing. And one of the problems or challenges is that students are often in several different classes. Right. So even just running a report on students in high flex, well, if that's all they're doing, they're gonna have a very different experience, whether they're in person or online, than if they're also taking a couple of other classes. So right. I think there's a real need for data. And we're trying to figure out how to get that data, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. So we're really open to suggestion.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The data is really messy. So a lot of our students at our learning centers are enrolled in multiple modalities. I've got students who are in an in-person class in the morning. They then go to an online class in the afternoon, and then they do asynchronous distance learning on platforms in addition to that. Well, how do you know which of those events a student is attending is driving the level gain, right? Because they're doing all of it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Complicated, very complicated.
Also looking at, like, there's so many different things. It's the duration, it's the intensity, it's are you looking at what % of people are getting post-tested? Are the in-person people getting post-tested more than the at-home people, depending on when they can get to school? How long is it taking people to get to the 40 hours? There's just so many different factors. It's really hard to sort any of that data out, unless you have just one class with a bunch of people that are only taking that one class, and some of them are at home and some of them are in school.
It's complicated. And then, with an online class, we have a lot of the learners who come to our online classes are parents of young children. So the comparison isn't how well does a student in an online class do versus an in-person class. It's how well does the student do compared to not coming to class at all. Because if they're not in the online class, they're probably not coming at all, right? So maybe the level gain rates aren't as good in the online class as they are in person, but they're better than if you weren't coming at all, right? So it's complicated, really complicated.
That's big out in, smaller, more rural areas. We don't have public transportation, all of those things. That's why we chose to keep going, because we've had we reached students during COVID that never would have come to class. So it's just a whole different group that we are serving. So not necessarily more, but just a different group that we never hit before.
A whole new population, right?
We have that same thing happening on a far reaching end of our consortium. We've engaged tons of people over there that never would come to an in-person, even when we offered it right in their city in the past. Now they are, and yeah.
We also talked in our group about, to nobody's great surprise, about how the interests and abilities and comfort with technology among teachers affects what programs are able to do. And that many programs have a mix of teachers, some of whom are quite comfortable with online technology, some of whom are not, and they have no interest in that. And so just the capacities of the teachers and their willingness, if they don't have those skills, to learn those skills has such an impact on what programs are able to do in terms of the kinds of classes they can offer.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to add from your group, Karen? Before we ask another group, maybe Sally wants to share from hers.
Oh, I was in Karen's group.
Oh, you were in the same group. All right, anybody else then? Another group want to share back? No, nothing else? All right,
And maybe you could share, I'm just looking at the groups.
go ahead, Astrid. What was?
I was just, Anne had chimed in a little bit in the chat. I wondered if she wanted to share it all.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was, yeah, our group talked a little bit about when you were having just kind of that balance of in-person versus online and or HiFlex. We did just talk about, you know, how hard it is to pull information about the effectiveness of those, just like everything that you guys have been talking about.
Yeah.
So, and I was trying to pull some data around students in one of our leveled classes at our Wilmer site last year that in November moved from in-person for part of the day and online for part of the day to HiFlexing the whole day. And there was a percentage of students that had been coming to the building that once they could stay home, chose to stay home. And so just kind of, this is the, they may or may not have been using a distance learning program to enhance what they were doing, because that they have a choice whether or not they want to do that. They were all in the exact same class. And then, so some signed up and always knew they were going to learn from home. Some signed up and always knew they wanted to be here at the building. And so very rarely did they switch one versus the other. And then some, once they could stay home, stopped coming to the building and stayed home.
And did you get any data about the performance of?
Yeah, I'm up to my eyeballs in that. And every time I think I have an answer, I go, well, yeah, but what about this? So I'm not there yet. So,
learning is messy, right? There's never just one variable.
Yeah. So like I have this crazy, like, this is what I'm working on. Like I'm not going to show you all the details, but it's like, there's not enough colors to color code what I want to color code. So, okay.
Yes, we were having a long conversation about this with Jenny at our distance learning team meeting last week. And you know, partly it's also, what are we testing for? And is that well aligned with what the students are getting out of the experience? So I know our adult ESL classes that are online, the teachers report that learners are making really good progress in their speaking and listening skills, right? Their ability to comprehend spoken English has increased a lot. Well, that's great, but we give people a reading test, right? So we're never going to capture that. So yeah, it's definitely messy, right? The data.
So in looking for stuff, one of the things that we're researching currently, which may or may not sort of is distance learning, we're looking for tools for our teachers to use to interact with their computers. Like they got the computer down, but now they're trying to teach math, probably one-on-one, synchronously, and they're, you know, writing upside down on math problems to show in their camera, right? Or trying, because we don't have touch screen computers to draw on. So we're researching, like, you know, what's the best, you know, input pad tablet that we could already connect to the computers that we have, so that it could be, you know, like there's online math whiteboard or whatever, but you still, you know, that if you still look like you're drawing like a pre-toddler, that isn't so.
Yeah, you need a tablet with a stylus, right? So you can write normally.
Yeah. So we're looking at like what people are using for those kind of things. So it's, you know, if you're looking for something that we need from you, it's not really your genre, but yet it hinders the distance learning thing if you don't have those tools, right?
So some sort of research on tools to support that kind of instruction.
Yeah. Yep.
That actually is something that Jason might be really interested in doing. He likes researching new technologies and stuff. I'll see if he wants to bite on that idea, Sally.
Okay, cool. That's what we're looking for right now.
It's a good one. Thank you for sharing. All right. Anybody else want to report out before we wrap it up? Or is there anything else in the chat, Astrid, that we should call out?
I just wanted to mention that it feels like that there's been a change in our student body since we've gone online. We are getting a lot of students who either have never been in the ABE system, so there's no test, no history for them, or we're getting many that are returning after a break that's too long for them to get a level gain when we test them. And then the other thing is, I think that because it's so easy to come online and just do it when you want to, a lot of the students, it takes a while for them to get the 40 hours. So I think that at least it feels like we're just not reaching that 40 hours like we would if they were in person. And so it's taking longer for us to get any kind of level gain. And some of that may just be that we're returning to testing. They have to make an appointment. They have to come in. You know, we make appointments for, 20 people on an afternoon, and only, 10 show up. And then we have people that drop out when we tell them that, they can't come until they have a test again. So we have changed our testing policy now. For new students, they don't get invited to class until they've taken that test. So anybody who doesn't show up and they're never put on the class list, and they would have to like knock on the door with us to, get their test and get into the class.
Are you only doing Ross, I had a question that
go ahead, Tom.
Well, I just had a question for you. I thought I heard you say, but I want to check this out. So are you thinking that online students perhaps are, I'm not judging this, I'm just observing, somewhat less casual or more casual about their commitment to actually coming every day than if they were coming in person?
I think so. And at Clues, we are so nice. We're Minnesota nice. They say, how many days a week is this? And we say, well, it's 4. Well, I can't come. Oh, that's okay. Come when you can. If you can only come once a week, we're happy to have you. So, and work is the very primary thing that they have. So we lose students as soon as they get enough work to get a job. That has to come first in their life.
Yes. So are you only doing in-person testing, or are you also offering online testing? Because maybe that
we aren't doing the online testing. We felt like that was too burdensome for our staff. And our students don't have technology. Probably, I used to say 99% of them are on their phones, but it's getting better because we've been giving out computers, and they've been getting computers. But we try to save our precious computers that we give out to people that are engaged. They're taking GED or they're taking computer class and they're coming all the time. We will provide those things as needed.
So you can't really do a remote Casas test on your phone, right?
Right. So, and our most engaged students have been for our DEED grant, our career students that are having one-on-one counseling with we have a staff member for that. They come into the building, they get their tests, they get a computer, they're followed through the process. If they have trouble with the GED program, part of the careers class that they have to do, they sit down with the counselor and she helps them get it so that they can get in. So that
customized support can really make a difference.
Yes, that has made a huge difference.
I would say we're moving to more online testing at our college location, because we are supporting like math class that is totally distance. So those college students that are registered for that math class, like Dev Ed math class, they can handle taking the like Casas or Tabe online. So we are getting test results that way from that group. But yeah, I agree, not on a phone, right? But so it's kind of like a specific population where I think that's working better than in other populations.
Yeah, that's good. Good feedback too. Astrid, anything from the chat? I see there's a bunch of chat.
I don't think there are any other topics that we have not covered yet.
Okay. We are just about at time.
Yep.
So thank you all for coming and for sharing your ideas. And if you did take some notes on the notes document, if you want to send that to me on Google Docs, we'll try and compile the ideas and share them back out, maybe through a newsletter article or something like that. So appreciate your time and your engagement in this discussion. It was really, really deep, I think. And I'm glad that you came.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending, and thanks so much to Susan and Tom for planning and facilitating this discussion.
And I think you can stop the recording, Astrid.